King Yeonsangun, the worst tyrant in the history of Joseon, the Korean dynasty from 1392 to 1910, got down on all fours for one woman. He literally said the words, "I shall be your horse, climb on," and then he did it. Her name was Jang Nok-su, a slave-born entertainer who, within 2 years of entering the palace, was sitting at junior third rank, Jong 3 Pum, a senior royal concubine. The official record, the Yeonsangun ilgi, says she was over 30, but her face, they wrote, looked like a 16-year-old child, and she had something the other 1,000 palace beauties didn't, the thing that turned a tyrant into a little boy. So who was she? Her father was a minor Joseon official, but her mother was a low-born concubine. In Joseon, if your mother was a slave, you were a slave. So Jang Nok-su grew up a household slave in the home of Prince Jean, Yeonsangun's own uncle. She married another slave, had a son, and before all that, she was so poor she sold her body to survive. The Silok writes that without flinching, but she learned to sing and dance and became a courtesan. According to a famous unofficial account, one day Yeonsangun put on commoner's clothes and slipped out to visit Prince Jean's house. He hears a voice singing. The moment it hits his ear, something stops in his chest. He says, "Who is that? Bring her to me, now." Just like that, she's in the palace. The year after she enters, she's promoted to junior 4th rank, Jong 4 Pum. The next year, junior 3rd rank, Jong 3 Pum. A slave to a senior royal concubine in 2 years. In a society where slaves stayed slaves and aristocrats stayed aristocrats for life, not supposed to be possible. And during this period, scouts called Chaehongsa fanned out across all 8 provinces and rounded up thousands of beauties. Out of those thousands, the king fixed his eyes on one, Jang Nok-su. So what happens? The court historian writes it down with disbelief. Quote, "She mocked the king like a child and cursed him like a slave, to his face." Picture this, straight from the record. Jang Nok-su says, "You must be punished. You shall carry me on your back and crawl 3 times around this room." And the king says, "Yes, I shall be your horse. Climb on." And he gets down, on all fours. She climbs on. 3 full laps, the most feared tyrant in the country. So what did she have? Open the record and the first clue jumps out. Volume 47 of the Yeonsangun ilgi, 1502. The historian's first line about her. Quote, "She was so good at singing that her voice came out clear without her lips moving." Picture that. Her lips don't move, but the singing flows out, clear and beautiful. That's almost ventriloquism. 1,000 singers in that palace, the one who sang without moving her lips. Only Jang Nok-su. Now here's where it gets strange. The same record describes her looks twice, and the 2 descriptions slap each other in the face. One line says, quote, "Her face was no more than ordinary, just average looking." But the very next line says, quote, "She was over 30, yet her face was like a 16-year-old child." So her looks were ordinary, but her youthfulness was unreal. That's not just a contradiction, it's a clue. 30 years old, 16-year-old face. Lock that in. And then the historian drops the real punch. Quote, "Her hidden cunning and bewitching charm were unmatched by anyone." And one more. Quote, "Jang Nok-su was clever, and she read people's hearts perfectly." That right there is the key. She didn't win on beauty. She won by reading the king's mind 1 beat faster than anyone else could. 1,000 beautiful singers. The woman who could pinpoint his mood the second he walked in. There was one. But if you stop there, the picture doesn't fit. Plenty of women tried to read him. Why was Jang Nok-su the only one who could turn a tyrant into a horse on the floor? The singing, the 16-year-old face, on a 30-year-old body, the mind reading. Just clues. There's one missing piece. To find it, we have to go back to a woman Yeonsangun lost when he was 7 years old. Rewind to 1482. Yeonsangun is 7. On the 16th day of the 8th lunar month that year, his birth mother, Lady Yun, known to history as Pyebi Yun-si, the deposed queen, is forced to drink poison. She dies. A 7-year-old loses his mother in a single day, and not in some accident. His own father, King Seongjong, ordered her death. There's an old account from that period. A piece of cloth, stained with the blood she coughed up before she died, reached the little boy. Imagine being 7 and being handed that. He didn't process it. He couldn't. The person who stepped into that empty space was Sungbu Buin Choi, his royal wet nurse. He loved her like a real mother. The moment he became king, he gave her 7 slaves outright and lifted 62 of her relatives from low-born status to commoner. That kind of mass elevation almost never happened in Joseon. So picture the man this kid grew into. A man who would throw everything at any woman who could fill the mother-shaped hole inside him. A psychiatrist at Seoul Asan Hospital, Professor Kim Chang-yun, analyzed Yeonsangun, and his diagnosis is precise. Psychological dependency on the mother figure. The wound that opened at age 7 never closed. Now, here's the real punch. Jang Nok-su, over 30 but with a 16-year-old face. It's not a contradiction. That's exactly the impression of someone who is mother and child at the same time. The face of a woman who can protect you, fused with the face of a girl who needs your protection. For a man frozen at 7 years old, that face hit him in the exact spot nothing else could touch. The singing without moving the lips. Same thing. A soft sound that just flows out. That's a lullaby, the sound a 7-year-old hears with his head on his mother's lap. So a 30-year-old tyrant listens and slips right back into being 7. And that last line, quote, Jang Nok-su was clever and she read people's hearts perfectly. That's not just perceptive. Think about how a mother handles a tantruming kid. He kicks, screams, demands ridiculous stuff. She takes it, all of it. That's what Jang Nok-su did. He says, be a horse. She says, climb on. She handled him exactly the way a mother handles a screaming toddler. That's how he ended up on all fours. The historian wrote it perfectly. Quote, she mocked the king like a child and cursed him like a slave. Like a child. That's the whole answer. In front of Jang Nok-su, Yeonsangun wasn't a king. He was a 7-year-old boy. This wasn't love. This was someone playing the role of his mother. But the love didn't stop there. Once she filled the empty space inside the king, he started throwing the entire country at her feet. March 1504. Yeonsangun sends 500 bolts of cotton to Jang Nok-su's house in one delivery. Enough cloth to support a commoner family for a generation. That same month, he tears down her neighbors' houses. Real families kicked into the street so her mansion could expand. Officials begged him to stop. He ignored them. That same year, a vice minister named Yi Byung-jong gets into an argument with Jang Nok-su's slave. The aristocrat ends up in prison. He had to drain his fortune in bribes to Jang Nok-su just to get out. And then, word for word from the record, Jang Nok-su said, quote, if I say one more word, how hard would it be to have him killed? June 9, 1504. 2 palace ladies, Jeon-hyang and Sugun-bi, and their entire families are executed by dismemberment. Their crime? Someone stuck a piece of paper on Jang Nok-su's wall. The historian wrote this down. Quote, Nok-su grew jealous in her heart and slandered them to the king day and night. One woman's jealousy, 2 families wiped out. Their heads were cut off and shown to the other palace ladies as a warning. Then comes the second day of the 9th lunar month. The year is 1506. 3 officials, Park Won-jong, Yu Sun-jong, and Song Hui-an, raise an army. The Jungjong Restoration. Jang Nok-su is dragged to the Gungisi, the military arms agency, the plot where Seoul City Hall stands today. She is beheaded. The people pour in. They throw roof tiles. They throw stones. The pile rises into a small mountain, and as they throw, they shout the line that ended up in the record. Quote, "The lifeblood of an entire nation was drained right here." But here's the part that will sit on your chest. When Yeonsangun took his last breath, exiled on Ganghwa Gyeodong Island, the name he called out was not Jang Nok-su. His final words, quote, "I want to see the Queen." He meant Lady Shin. Pyebi Shin-si, also called Gyeochang Buin, his real wife, the queen they had deposed, not Jang Nok-su, Lady Shin. And Lady Shin, after he died, she tended his grave for 31 years. So that thing he had with Jang Nok-su, was it ever really love? Let's pull it together. A slave-born entertainer jumped to junior 3rd rank in 2 years. But the real answer was never her beauty, never her singing, never her dancing. The real answer was that she fit perfectly into the empty space left in a man who lost his mother at 7. So it looked like love. Underneath, it was the shadow of his mother. And when he was actually dying, the name on his lips was someone else. It only takes one person to turn love into madness. See you on the next one.